All right, hello everyone. Excited to have everybody here, and coming through on a Thursday morning, and you know, thought it was a good time as we go into the new year to just kind of talk through some of the things that we are thinking about, how ambassador marketing is going to change in the coming months, and what Fohr is focused on here as we look into the next year. I'm going to do about 10 or 15 minutes, just talk you through some things, and then we are going to talk to Brittany Hennessey, um, who has been helping us with education and community at Fohr. Then we're going to talk to Jade, who is one of our Sephora Squad ambassadors. And then we're going to speak with Amalia from OXO about their strategies and how they're using ambassadors going into 2021. So if you have questions, I will try and leave a few minutes at the end of each talk to be able to answer those. But let's just roll in. Just want to make sure all's well. Great. Okay, so as we think about going into the next year and building for the future, we kind of ask ourselves two questions, right? What does that future look like, and what technology do we need to have to be able to address it? So, when we think about what the future looks like, y'all, if you've been to our last webinars that we've done, or you've been paying attention over the last 9 months or so, for us, a big shift has been from influencers to ambassadors. I believe it was back in June or May when we kind of officially came out and made this switch. And there was a number of reasons why we felt that influencer marketing was getting too transactional. It wasn't as effective as it could be. And it was kind of losing some of what made it so special. And when we looked at what we had been doing and the campaigns that we've been running for clients that were really working, they felt a lot more like ambassador campaigns. And the influencers working on them were acting as true ambassadors rather than paid spokespeople. And we came out with the 10 rules. If you don't have this, we can follow up after with a PDF. We have all of these listed and explained in there. And these rules are a framework that we have for probably the last 18 months been running all of our campaigns on, and that we released again last summer. But they're guiding principles for how we run different kinds of campaigns and how we make sure that the partners that we do work with are the right partners for that project and are given the time and background and space to create the kind of content that's actually going to move the needle and persuade people. It's been, overwhelming, really amazing response from both the brand and influencer community saying like, yes, this is where things should be going. And this is what we want to be doing. And, as we kind of started to roll that out and evangelize this to brands, we then asked again, what's the technology that can help support these programs? And part of what we want to talk about today is AMP, which is a new product that we have coming out. It was going to launch this week. We've got a embargoed press piece that we're working on, so I believe that will officially be kind of screaming this out and telling the world about it next week, but y'all get a little bit of a sneak peek on what AMP is. And I think, less in me, talking to you about AMP for an hour, but I think thinking about philosophically, why do we think this platform is important? And, one part of that is, thinking about how a brand's relationship with their customers is changing. A question I ask a lot of times when we're talking to a brand about AMP is in 5 years, do you think that your customers are going to have a larger following on average or a smaller following? And of course, everybody says they'll have a larger following. And if that's the answer, then my next question is, okay, well, what do how are you addressing that? How are you thinking about that? How are you changing the way that you interact with those customers, if each one of them is starting to have, 500, 1,000, 3,000 followers, how are you going to find those people? How are you going to work with them? How are you going to make them feel like they're part of that community? And I think by and large, most people don't have an answer to that. Next is that, I think we've seen this shift over the last few years, and it's just been kind of expediting in the last year. In that, as a brand, I think you need to have more than a product, right? The great brands in the world have always been about a story. They've always been about something else. Apple, Nike aren't just about buying shoes or buying a computer, but about what that says about you being an Apple or a Nike customer. But I think for any brand, we now have to try and create, again, some sort of community, some sort of emotional connection between you and that customer. It's why we see so many brands spinning out influencer, collaborations or brands under their umbrellas, is that influencers already have that relationship with their audience. And so if they sell something, it's a lot faster to build that emotional connection between the customer and the product. But that's a microcosm for a much bigger thing that is happening, where brands need to engage with customers in a deeper way. And again, if we think about that brand to customer relationship, it used to be about, I give you money and you give me a product or service. And it's more now about that transfer value, about what it says about you to be a customer. And if you as a brand aren't controlling that narrative, I think in the next 10 years or so, it's going to be really difficult to be competitive. And how do influencers and ambassadors play into this, right? If we think about just Instagram, let's say, okay, Instagram has over 1 billion accounts right now. 10% of them are over 10,000 followers. And so if you think about your influencer strategy, that's probably mostly where you're focused. And if we zoom in on this little slice of that pie, in there we've got micro influencers and mid-tier influencers and macros and celebs, and we've got a $5 to $7 billion industry that is growing really quickly, and a new kind of advertising that's really exciting. And for us, this tier is where we are applying that ambassador mindset. This is where our paid campaigns are happening, and we are kind of briefing and doing very in-depth projects with a small number of influencers. But again, as we zoom back out, that's a tiny part of the larger space. And AMP is focused on that full stack of all users, anybody that is a customer or advocate or fan of a brand, and how you can find them and work with them. And another quick visualization, because today we're going to talk a bit about how we fill campaigns and the different ways to cast a campaign. If you think about a normal campaign and you're this brand in the middle and all these dots are possible influencers that you could work with, you just have a naturally narrow view of the world. Even if you're a Fohr customer, thank you. We've got 125,000 influencers on the platform. But again, there's over 1 billion people on Instagram alone. And 10% of those billion, so 100 million, have over 10,000 followers. So it's literally impossible for you, when you cast a campaign, to say, I know I have found the best people, because your view is just narrowed. And what AMP does in allowing influencers to apply, and we'll talk a bit more about this, it opens that up. This is what we did with Sephora Squad. Instead of going out and casting that campaign, we created a centralized place and said, hey, if you want to apply for this, it's open. You can apply for it. And we found incredible people that we would have never found had we done things the traditional way. And it inspired us to create a scaled, simple solution for brands to create these pages on their own, where they can ask influencers to apply. That's what AMP is. And again, that's a bit what we're going to be talking about today. And so, yeah, what is it? We'd like to think of it as kind of a career page for influencers that, I think every consumer brand in the world in the next few years is going to have an ambassadors tab on their website, and they're going to have a way for influencers, customers, advocates to apply to work with them as an ambassador. And this tool makes that really easy. Within 48 hours, you can have a page where influencers can apply. It's a centralized place to run your ambassador programs. It's a way to manage your DMs and inbound requests by creating applications and making them give you a certain amount of information and data instead of just DMing you and be like, hey, let's collab. And really importantly, it's a way to identify and engage with your influential customers, the people who are already buying your products, and build community with them. And it matters, and this is a lot of what the conversation today is about. It matters for a few reasons. We saw this summer a call from the community to have brands work in a more fair and equitable way. This is not just in their hiring practices internally. This is in the way that they hire freelancers or photographers or models or influencers. And I think a system can really only truly be fair if it is transparent and it is centralized and it's public. And the influencer space is still, by and large, driven by relationships. And if you don't have relationships with the brands that you want to work with, you're not going to be able to work with them. And that's just like not a very smart, not a very fair way to run a industry. Again, all of you who work at brands, your company would never not have a careers page, because you need to have places where people who want to work with you can raise their hand and say, hey, I want this opportunity. If we didn't have that, we'd have to just use recruiters and our personal networks. And that, again, that wouldn't be a really fair or great way to run recruiting. And I think the influencer space needs this innovation. They need this to change, and it can no longer be gated by relationships. Another thing, just as brands, is that when you reach out cold to an influencer to onboard them into a campaign, you're tilting the kind of power balance in that negotiation away from you, because you don't know now if they're a fan of your brand or if they're just trying to, run up the cost of the campaign so they can get as much money as they can. And you don't, without that passion and without that care and affinity to the brand, it's going to be hard to create authentic relationships and posts that can actually move the needle. Again, it's impossible to kind of understand the true motivations when you're doing only outbound outreach to onboard influencers. The other thing is that, again, for any brand, building a community of advocates that love your product is absolutely a must do. For many years when we started this business, Glossier, everyone was like, who's the best at influencer marketing? Glossier, Glossier, Glossier. Well, Glossier actually wasn't spending a huge amount of money on their marketing. They built a community. And of course, they were a buzzy brand, and they had a lot of things going for them that's hard to replicate. But they really invested in that community, and that meant they didn't have to spend huge amounts of money. Another thing is as we look at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and those ad platforms and some of the more nefarious ways that they can be used, I think knowing that we have to and need to be on these platforms, but investing in people rather than sending that money and opportunities to Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter is really important. And so I'm excited to talk to Jade, Amalia, and Brittany today about some of these things and jump into that a little more. I was just trying to be a bit short because I know I was late, so I'm gonna stop sharing this here, and let's bring in Brittany. Brittany, you there?
I'm here. It's saying I can't start my video because the host has stopped it.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix that. Okay. Let's try that.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Hi, everybody. Good morning.
I am excellent. I think, just to kick off, let's get a little intro and let people know who you are if they don't already know.
Sure. Hi. I saw a lot of people say they were excited for this, and I'm super excited. I'm Brittany Hennessey. Hi, everybody. Been in influencer marketing for a very long time before we even paid them. Can't believe that was ever a time. I'm the author of Influencer Building Your Personal Brand in the Age of Social Media. I started the influencer department at Horizon Media a really long time ago. I started the influencer team at Hearst Magazine's digital media a shorter time ago. And now I'm the co-founder of Carbon August, and I run the Fohr community Facebook group. So I'm super excited for everything James talked about. He's definitely on the ground. All of these things are things that influencers have been waiting for. So can't wait to talk a little bit more about everything you have going on.
And I think just to jump into it, I know at Hearst, you had to cast for, you know, a number of not just different, magazines, but the brands that were, advertising with them.
Mm-hmm.
So one day it might be a drugstore brand, and the next day it might be, a luxury one.
Yes.
How, I think maybe thinking through what you felt was broken in that process, and how it kind of creates these partnerships that maybe don't actually make a lot of sense.
Sure. So I think, one of the main things was figuring out who actually loved the product. And, there are a few examples of influencers who really love something and they're constantly talking about it, so that when it comes time to cast, that's an obvious choice. But, a lot of time and effort was wasted trying to reach out to influencers like, hey, we have this new launch. Is this a product you're interested in? And really trying to gauge if they love the product, and their audience will know that, or if they're agreeing to do the campaign because, well, they don't hate the product and there's money involved. And I think, especially in 2015 and 2016, in the earlier times when the budgets were really starting to pick up, influencers were not really interested in turning down paid work. This was very new to a lot of them. And even if it was their ninth favorite product, they'd be on board. And there really was no way to say, like, but who out there, who is this your number one product? Like, who is like the top fan, where if we book you for this collab, when you announce it, your audience is gonna like lose their mind because they know this is a dream come true. And I think that was really hard to do. And then just, always difficult was casting diverse, talent. And for me, I was someone who really took knowing the whole landscape very seriously because I had no choice. I was casting for 17 all the way to car and driver, which is a huge span of, male, female, young and old, beauty and car parts, like really having to, and then like Musically, which is what it was back then, and YouTube and blogging. And so just having to know like who's everybody. And I think, most people are not forced to do that. So they're very much, they have people that they follow. When there's a deadline, those are the first people who come to mind. And people tend to cast people who look like them because that's who they are naturally following. So just the speed at which this industry moves, which I know everyone who has ever had to cast a campaign, especially when it's for a client, like they want the list yesterday, coupled with really trying to find true fans of the brand and trying to have a diverse roster, there's just so much that can go wrong. And in order to deliver on time, I think, we miss a lot of opportunities to get really great talent who would knock it out of the park just because it's too difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like a few points in there that were so important is like, one, that idea when, anytime an influencer is going to do a sponsored post, their audience is going to be a bit weary of it, and when the product is one that they have historically been into, you can see that like when they announce it, you can see that audience be like, oh, this is amazing. Congratulations. So proud of you.
Right.
Like, they get actually excited that this person is entering into an ambassador program because they know that they really love it. And I think that like it's a hard thing to get right, or as you said, it feels really hard, and so it's like it's a happy accident when it happens.
Right.
Because sometimes you don't know that, you know, someone doesn't talk about, you know, the brands that they love on their social, especially as like, if, I mean, I know we're going to talk to Amalia from OXO. If I'm a beauty influencer who's a huge OXO fan for my kitchen, but I don't talk about cooking, then they're never going to know that.
Right.
And, you know, the last part that I want to just talk about on diversity, because I know you must have hit this in with Hearst, with luxury clients especially, right? Where they would say, well, that, you know, it's just too hard to find. There's not enough diversity that fits these brands, you know, what this brand considers to be, you know, right for this campaign. I'm wondering if you can just talk through a bit of how, you know, brands opening themselves up and, you know, allowing people to raise their hands might, you know, make it easier for them to understand these communities that maybe they don't come from better.
Yeah, you know, I think influencer marketing, it has a lot of issues that our particular side of the industry can't control, because brands from the top down, including like what goes in print magazines, have a very specific idea of what their target consumer looks like. And we all know, usually tall, white, beautiful woman, that's it. I mean, in no world can that be the only people who buy your product, or none of these brands would be in business. And I think, you know, you look at a lot of these influencers, especially Black influencers, who I think, you know, we've notoriously heard that like they're not luxury enough. And sometimes I look at the feed and I'm like, but everything she owns is from LVMH. How does she not fit the mold, you know? And then you have to question what's the motive there. Or if, you know, it's a plus size influencer who has all the bags and accessories, but they don't want to be associated with that. And then I think brands really have to think about, you know, what's your goal here? Is your goal to preserve, you know, the gatekeeping? In that case, influencer marketing shouldn't even be part of your, you know, part of your formula, because so much of that is letting the audience drive the conversation. And, you know, can you find people who are going to speak authentically to your brand, who do live the lifestyle, even if they don't check your standard boxes, and knowing who those people are? Because in the luxury space, no one's going to turn down a luxury deal. I mean, who doesn't want to be the face of, you know, all the big names, all the Fifth Avenue stores? They're like, I'll do it for a free bag, for some shoes. You don't even have to pay me. But is that who you want? You know, if it's more of who lives this lifestyle, it's the influencer who, when they showed you the tour of their home, does have a custom closet with all your bags and all your shoes and a special scarf rack with all your scarves. And that's someone who their audience knows they live that lifestyle, probably takes recommendations from them. That's your goal influencer. And again, difficult to find those people, but with something like AMP, it's perfect, because there's no trying to figure out, how do I contact this person in the Paris office to, you know, talk to me about this purchase I just made. It's more of, I love this brand, here's their page. I can raise my hand and say, you know, I got my first piece for my 16th birthday. I'm buying something for myself every year. This is how many of your things I own. You know, I have a whole collection. Then you can understand, you know, whether it's clothing or even products like things in the kitchen, baby products, you can understand the history this person has with your brand. And I think when you start looking at those things, allowing influencers to pitch themselves and tell you their story, as opposed to just trying to get a glimpse of what they're posting on social, you'll see that a lot of these influencers do align with your brand story, and they can speak to your heritage, because this is the lifestyle they've chosen to lead. But we don't currently, I mean, with the exception of AMP, which when you told me about it, I was beyond excited. We don't really have an option like that for, it's just like you said, you DM someone, or maybe you know someone who works at the brand, but that just leaves out so many people that would be perfect. So when casting, you have to really think, and this is always what I had to do at Hearst, is this the best that's out there? Not, was this the easiest to secure? Was it the fastest? Is this the best we can do? And lots of times the answer is no, just because you don't have the time, we didn't have the tech, it just was impossible. And you'd go, I know there's someone who, this is the only coffee maker they use, or this is the only place they've ever bought products for their baby. Like, I know those people are out there. But if you can't find them in an easy way, then none of your campaigns will be as good as they can be. And, for how much money we spend on influencers, don't you want the absolute best you can get for your money? So really just having a place where, like I said, influencers can raise their hand and tell you, here's my life story as it pertains to your brand, can help you look past a lot of things. Maybe the target demographic isn't right, but this person is right, and you can integrate them into other things, and maybe they can write articles for you, and you can put them in the store, and they bring their family because they're in the store all the time anyway. Trying to figure out how can we best activate this person because they do fit our target demo, because they spend a lot of money with us.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into bringing on Jade, and maybe I'll have both of you talk for a second, and then Brittany will say goodbye, and we'll talk a bit more to Jade. But I think that you said as the budgets get bigger, right, we tend towards doing the things that are easy, and I think that was something for us with Sephora that we were interested in when we launched this, was the idea of, like, if you really want this deal and this contract and to work with this brand, we're going to ask you to apply, because I think there's a lot of people that are trying to push the influencer industry into celebrity and have it act like celebrity and work like celebrity. And that means, treating influencers as talent, as we should. They are talented. But I think where we're trying to go is a kind of hybrid where it can act also a bit like a job market that's a little more fair. That's not just you have to have an agent, you have to have those relationships, but also if you want to work with a brand and get paid tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe you should have to apply for it and show that you're really excited and answer some questions about why you're the right person. And Brittany, I guess just in closing, as you say goodbye, I know you've worked a bit in the celebrity space and you've been in that world and influencers, and just, maybe the danger in the space moving too much into that, like, celebrity talent world.
Yeah, I think for the most part, there are two types of influencers. You have the influencers who are much more personality. Their audience doesn't care what they're talking about. They're just here because they like their face, they like their voice, they think they're funny. It spans any niche. Then you have influencers who really are subject matter experts. They can tell you. I've worked with Jade quite a few times. Jade knows everything there is to possibly know about hair. Like, if there's a hair thing, I was calling her, Jade, come do this hair thing for me. And we've done, somebody said she's the best. Yes, she absolutely is. And so, some people do have a very specific skill set. They can do a tutorial, they can educate an audience. And so we have to understand that those are two very different things, especially when it comes to, sponsored content that really does tell an audience what a product is, how to use it, why this ingredient matters. It can't just be someone who's going to be super pretty, hold it up as the YouTubers do and just say, go buy this. You've got to be able to educate them. And I think, just like with a job that requires a lot of experience, you don't just show up and you're like, I'm cute, I know the owner here, hire me. I mean, sometimes that's what happens, but for the most part, it is, here's my experience. Here are past, case studies that I've worked on. Here's what I've learned about your company and how I can, bring my skill set and help you achieve your goals. And I think asking influencers to do that, especially when you're talking deals that are six figures, is the way to move. And influencers are willing to do it. The only reason why you don't see so much of it now is because, again, there's no way to pitch a brand knowing that they'll get it. And I have worked with so many influencers who have come up with great ideas, put together a whole deck, hired a designer, took specific photos so they could pitch this brand. They email it and crickets forever. And it's like, did they even get this? Did they open it? Did I do all this work for nothing? And that's really disheartening, for someone who loves your brand. This is the dream. They're willing to apply and there's no one to receive their application. Yeah. And like, if they were going to do all of that for a shot at getting on your radar, imagine what they'll do when you pay them. That's who you want to hire. So just, remembering that they're influencers, but most of them are also content creators. And we treat creators like artists who need time to develop ideas, create things, need support and need funding, but at the end produce really beautiful work, and you get the added bonus that they have built this community that will eat up essentially anything they put out. So, going forward is just making sure everybody has the best tools to find the best people, and making sure influencers are comfortable and happy putting that much work into a pitch, because they know somebody will actually get it.
Yeah, that's great. And welcome, Jade, and thank you, Brittany.
Of course.
You can say, everyone say bye, Brittany, now. Thanks,
bye, Brittany.
Jade, I think that's a great, jumping off point. And you've big, 300,000, about 300,000 followers on Instagram, and obviously a big following across a number of platforms. And it's not normal to have to apply.
Right.
And Sephora Squad's even different because you have to then put yourself out there publicly and tell your audience I applied.
Yes, which is interesting. I never had to do that before.
And just if you could talk us through from an influencer's standpoint, because I know you probably felt a bit trepidation or some skepticism in doing that, because it's not how things normally go, but just why you eventually hit apply and what that process was like for you.
Yeah, so I think that it was different for me because I've been creating content essentially since 2010 on YouTube, then Instagram, and kind of filtering through other platforms as well. And so I kind of went through a whole kind of spectrum of, pitching myself versus having a manager who was just one person helping me do stuff, and she was pitching me places. But I specifically call my manager I had when I first started out, because she actually created kind of the mindset that I still have today when it comes to how I even associate myself with brands. She was kind of in the ambassador mindset from that point. And so when I started working with her in 2013, that was kind of the main kind of point that we would always talk about is, when you get a brand deal or you get to do, a post for somebody, you have to make sure that the brand is somebody that not only you want to work with, but you also want your platform to be associated with. So I kind of started out with at a very kind of infancy part of my journey to kind of keep that in mind. Now, granted, I've done all sorts of partnerships and stuff. And so now I have a manager who, she actively pitches me. I don't ever really reach out to brands anymore. And so when Sephora Squad came up, it definitely was foreign for me to actually apply to something and, say, hey, I'm going to put myself out there. But truly, at the end of the day, I love Sephora. I use products from them all the time. And I knew for the past few years that, I had worked with them, with you all at Fohr a couple of times on kind of one-off campaigns here and there. But I just knew that I wanted something long-term with a brand like Sephora. And so when Sephora Squad came up, I was like, you know what? I'm not too good for this. I want to work for them. I do. And I want to do it in a capacity where I'm not just posting one campaign for a couple months and moving on. Like I really want it to be something that is long term. And that's something that I've always wanted as an influencer and content creators. Like I don't necessarily want those one-off relationships because they don't mean anything. I was always about the rebook. Like when am I going to get rebooked by this brand? What is it going to take to get me that, you know, next deal? And I realized over the years that the collaborations that I had where I was doing like 2 to 3, 4 projects, maybe a couple each year with the same brand, were really just more fulfilling on my end and performed better on my platform, and also gave me the incentive to continue sharing the products even outside of those collaboration moments, because it made sense and the brands that I was collaborating with naturally filtered into the, you know, my content and my lifestyle. So when Sephora Squad came up and applying, you know, I honestly did it on a whim. Like I saw it, it took me 20 minutes to apply, and I was like, okay, I got to share this with my audience. Okay, I'll do it a couple times. You know, it may feel a little weird to say, hey, can y'all write a testimonial for me? Which I've never asked my audience to do anything like that before. Like I've hosted giveaways and all that kind of stuff, but never, you know, hey, can you do this on my behalf? And so that felt a little like, ooh, I don't know if they're going to actually do it, but they did. And when I got accepted, they were genuinely happy for me. Like kind of like you mentioned before, like when I announced that I got that opportunity, I mean, they really were like, Jade, like we are so happy for you. And so that just, it made all of it just like make sense from start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think Sephora is a great example. I mean, we pulled some numbers, and this year, you know, you've done 118 posts for Sephora.
Which is so crazy. It doesn't even feel like that at all.
26.7 million impressions.
Which is also crazy because
yeah.
I would not have known that at all. And I feel like I should know these numbers, but I don't. It all feels just like natural. And I'm like, oh, okay, like my audience liked this post. Great. Okay, move on. Like, you know, I don't put that much, you know, depth into it. But hearing that, like, I'm like, whoa, like this is going well.
And I think for the brands out there, it's a kind of like, you know, open secret, right? That like if you do the longer term partnership, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, right? If a brand comes to you and says, I want to work with you for 6 months and I'm buying 10 posts, are you thinking like, oh, I'm also gonna make sure I'm covering them organically and not just doing, you know, because
100%.
I feel like for if you get a contract for one post, you're like, fine, I'm doing one post. But a longer partnership, how do you think about that? How do you think about the organic bonus that you're giving them?
Yeah, so especially with those like 6 month plus, even sometimes if it's like 3 months, usually I won't give it that much consideration if it's like 2 to 3 posts or less, like Instagram feed type of stuff. But if we're talking long term, 6 months to a year, whatever, I want it to feel as organic as possible to my audience, because I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of sponsored content, and having that balance is important. Like you have to think about, okay, I don't want my audience to feel like I'm constantly selling to them. So in order for, you know, for me to make it make sense to them and not make it feel like ad, I have to infiltrate it into other content where maybe it's not the hero product in like a routine, but it is something that's being mentioned. And I'm keeping kind of like a mental note of like, okay, how much did I talk about this brand? Or especially Sephora, that's such an easy retailer to use because they're a retailer. So I could constantly be talking about Sephora in so many odd different ways. So I definitely think about that. And I think that it also helps that, you know, sponsored content filter in well, because as much basically as an influencer, I want to do the best work I possibly can for my clients, for the people that I'm working for, right? For those brands. And so it's also about making sure that the quality of my content overall is at a similar place. So, you know, a sponsored content cannot be high quality, you know, a set studio, blah, blah, blah. And then my regular content be just like chill, like, you know, rinky dink iPhone footage. Now, granted, in moderation and in a right balance, it actually works because people actually gravitate towards that like more relatable content. But sometimes like I'll do sponsored content using an iPhone because it ends up matching kind of the ebbs and flows of my content organically. So playing in with all of that stuff does, I think, help. Well, clearly it helps overall because the content that's sponsored it does well.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
a great point. And I think that, like, especially if you're going to be doing so many posts, your audience needs to feel like you're excited about it, and you need to be excited, right? Because it's easy to take a deal and be excited the first month, but if you don't like the product and you're not connected with the brand, like 4 months later when you're like, I still have to talk about this and I don't
been
like
there,
it.
done it.
Yeah.
Like I experienced it, and it's funny because that's the other piece of it is like there's not that many brands that do these long-term partnerships, right? And so because I've done a few of them with different brands, when I started getting the first couple, I wasn't as kind of choosy with the brand. Like it might have been a notable brand, like it was a brand I had been familiar with and stuff, but it wasn't a brand that I was like, oh my gosh, like I love multiple things in this collection. But it was like, oh, I know this brand. I really like what they stand for. Like I love the team that they're doing. But sometimes when it came down to it, the actual products were not my faves, but yet I still had to push it like they were my faves. And that felt conflicting for me. And so because I had those experiences, even now more than ever, I am so specific with the partnerships that I do because I have to remember like why I even got to the place that I'm at. It's because people value my opinion. They value the choices that I make, the why I choose the things that I choose to use and share. And I had to start positioning myself as number one. And to brands, that may sound like, oh, that's, we're paying you. But no, I'm a brand too. And I have a platform that, I've built for years and years and years. So I can't just, hey, the check is right. The check is big, and it's going to be, 6 months. I'm good. I don't have to worry about my bills for six, like that's a big thing. And I've had those moments where I've been like, okay, I'm going to take this because like my life would be solid for a minute. And not to say that I would always be like, no in the beginning for anything, but I definitely take more precaution now because I think about it like, what do I want Lipstick and Curls to be affiliated with forever? And I think that speaks to this ambassador mindset. Like, it's not just about doing one-off campaigns, which I've had years of doing one-off campaigns. I still do that, but it's more and more about like, me as a person. I love those long-term partnerships because I get to know the brand so much more. I get to know the team. I get to understand the value behind why products are made. And that just helps me create the content that really does perform well online.
Yeah. Well, if y'all don't follow Jade, you should. Lipstick and Curls, everywhere that you would follow her. I also just want to give a quick shout out to your husband hyping you up in the chat. May everyone like bring a hype man to the webinar. I love it. But thank you.
I didn't even see that
so
just till now.
Hey, and
babe.
we're gonna bring Amali on here, and I'm gonna probably go 5 minutes past just because I was a bit late. So hopefully y'all can stay a couple minutes. Thanks so much, Jade.
Thank y'all.
Hi, Amalia.
Hi, how's it going?
It is excellent. And are you in Switzerland?
I am. Can you tell by the Alps behind me?
So thank you for joining us, like, a little bit later in the day for you from Switzerland. So maybe just a quick, 30 seconds on who you are and what you do at OXO.
Yeah, so I'm Amalia Safran. I am the brand communications manager at OXO. So I manage our influencer marketing and partnerships for the brand. And just for anyone who isn't familiar with OXO, we are a home and housewares company. We make tools for cooking, baking, cleaning, organizing, brewing coffee, even some baby and toddler gear.
And OXO is one of those brands that like, enjoys a lot of like organic love. People who are OXO fans are obsessed with it. And, I'd love to hear a bit about how you think about that with your ambassadors. And maybe, I know that the strategy has maybe changed a bit over the years. But just how you all when you're looking to work with someone, how are you how are you picking the right person, or how have you, in the past, and kind of how are you looking to, over the next year?
Yeah, so OXO's really lucky in that we have a ton of fans and a lot of loyal fans. I think everyone probably has an OXO tool in their home and like doesn't even know it, but if you go into your kitchen drawer, like there's a good probability that a piece of equipment in there will be OXO. And so we have a lot of people who want to work with us, which is amazing. And it puts us in a great position, but it can be also difficult to organize that group of people to keep track of these people who are reaching out to us, whether it's through like a DM or through customer service or things like that. And so we definitely have started to use AMP to help organize that, and then also to help better track who is talking about us already, who's tagging us in posts or stories or whatever it might be organically. And that's really valuable for us because then we can use that content if we have the permission to use it on our own channels, and kind of builds that community out from there.
Yeah. And I think one of the great things, and everyone on the webinar here, when we kind of officially launch, we can definitely send a lot more information about the platform. But one of the great things is it is tracking stories. And so you're able to get that, I think you all do a decent amount of gifting, right? Because you have a product that's easily giftable. It's not a car, or a computer or something. So, I'm sure just in running robust gifting campaigns, it's probably hard to just know, wait, did this person who we sent it to post? Like, did you all used to have to just were you just checking those stories every day to see if people were posting? How are you managing that?
Exactly. It was a super manual process where I'd have a spreadsheet and just like change someone to green or red if I saw a post or not. If it was a story and I missed it, like that was the end of it. There was no way to track that. So it was a very, very manual process for us. Even getting those inbound requests that I was mentioning was also very manual. We had a Google Doc where we were keeping track of people, but it wasn't giving people enough credit. We weren't able to tell what product lines they might be interested in. We weren't able to tell if like they're already, big fans of the brand and what they already use, what their favorite tools are, things like that. And so it was all just like completely manual. If like you happen to get on our radar and like you interest us, then like we would reach out to you and be able to form like a more formal relationship with you. But if not, then like we lost all of that information. Like we weren't keeping track of those emails coming in and those DMs coming into our social feeds. And so we're able to just better organize everything now. We can keep track of people. We can tell if people are interested in a certain line, what tools they're using for the brand. And that's been really valuable for us, and I think will really help shape the next couple of months of how we work with people.
Yeah, and as you think about the paid work that y'all do, how, why, obviously we're working together for years, and we're nudging y'all to do long-term partnerships, but I guess just would love to hear a bit about, what that's been like, moving to a place where you're doing gifting and you're doing kind of transactional one-off stuff, but that you have a core group of ambassadors that you lean on throughout the year.
Yeah, so I think we started we call it our advocate program. It's a group of 10 or so people that we work with for the full year. And it's a paid relationship. And we started it for a few reasons. I think one of them was that we were finding with one-off campaigns, we would send someone a product, and sometimes we have products that are a little higher dollar value, like a coffee maker or a stroller, and then we would never see that coffee maker or stroller again after their one post. And we were like, if they actually believe in this product, then like a coffee maker, you're going to use every morning. Like, how could you not be, talking about that again? And so we wanted to get people into our community and partner with people who really would become more entrenched in the brand. We would give them obviously more product, but then they would use that product all day long, and they would share that product more organically and build more of a story. I think too, the benefit of that longer term partnership is like we can really, tell them more about our marketing calendar and line them up better with the campaigns that we have going on or special launches going on. We can really entrench them into like everything that we're working on and our positioning, and like get them to be essentially part of our team, our marketing team. And so, we've been able to get a lot I would say higher quality content, content that we can share on our platforms and we're really proud of. We can also, I think it looks great if we're sending out an email and you see some of our advocates are in that email and they're really part of our community, and we're trying to make all of our consumers, be aware of these advocates. And I think it's really made our marketing a little more personable and relatable, which is great.
Yeah. And Allison was asking, how AMP goes into that. And I think, one of the great things is that, we can onboard those advocates who are, have their, paid contracted posts that we're obviously, y'all are tracking and our teams are tracking. But like we were talking with Jade, all the stuff in between the posts that they do organically, the times they mention them when they're just cooking, whatever, those things are also tracked, and we're able to kind of pull together the contracted posts that they're doing as well as the organic, which again, as we look to the next year, I know that's something that we work on with y'all, and that's important, is if we say, okay, who are we going to work with again next year? And as Jade was saying, a big thing we'll look at is well, how much organic coverage do we get? How excited did they seem about this? And did they, turn that excitement into, talking to their followers about it? And I think that's been super important for you. And the coffee example was so honestly pivotal in us shifting to ambassador marketing and working in AMP, was that I think everyone here has probably had that experience where you pay somebody and they talk about it and they say, this is the best thing ever, I love it. And then a week later, it's gone and they're using a competitor. And it makes you well, let's talk about that, right? It's one, it's disappointing and you feel a bit silly, you got played almost, even though they didn't technically do anything wrong, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of our products also are for a specific reason and they're solving a specific problem. So with this coffee maker example, it can make a pot of coffee or it can make a single cup. So if the next day you're using a pod coffee machine, that completely defeats the purpose of our coffee maker. And that just means what you were saying about our coffee maker is not genuine at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that again, customers are sniffing out that inauthentic stuff so much more now. And I think that, a post that doesn't seem authentic, where they don't seem to really care about it, is just dismissed. I think the last question is, and again, is important, is that we're talking about AMP and ambassadors. And of course, our hope is that we can work with people who already love the brand. But we do work with people that maybe haven't been OXO customers, and work to build that kind of love and brand loyalty. I know that we were supposed to do a dinner with all the ambassadors in New York and fly them in, but of course COVID happened and that got delayed. But maybe talk a bit more about how y'all, a brand that there's so much science behind the things you do, and there's so much, you're doing things so intentionally, how you communicate that to ambassadors. So even if they weren't a passionate advocate before the contract, by the time they post, they are.
Yeah, that's really important to us. So we have opportunity to bring in our product managers or engineers, so the people who really are behind the science of those products. I think putting them in front of our advocates so they can see the passion behind the brand is really important. Like you mentioned, there was supposed to be an event, so that would have been a great opportunity. I think any moment or chance where even I can speak to the advocate, in the beginning as an intro call, just to show we are humans behind this brand, that you can come to us. That's a really big thing. OXO loves getting feedback. So if you're an advocate and you're working with us and you actually didn't like the product, tell me that you didn't like the product. I'll get you on the phone with the product manager and the engineer, and you can talk about it a little bit more, which would then help us in the end to, the next time we make a product, we can make it better. And so we really want to make sure it's a two-way conversation, that we're here again, that we're real people behind this brand. And I think that will ultimately create a better relationship for us working with people, and ultimately better content.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate everybody taking some time. I know we're 5 minutes over, but I appreciate y'all giving me a little bit of leeway there at the end. Amalia, thank you so much. Jade, Brittany, thank you. Thank you everyone who came. We will have a recording of this that we'll share out. And we're going to be talking a lot about ambassador marketing and AMP over the next few months. I'm sure we'll make sure y'all are sick of hearing about it, but we really think that not only is the product something that can change the industry for better, but I think it's something that influencers and brands alike want. They want an easier way to work together and find each other, and we want our clients and all of y'all to be able to find the best people possible. And I think that that's going to mean opening up a place where people can raise their hand and say, hey, I love this brand and I want to work with you. So we're always here. If you want to see a demo or something, you can reach out to sales@fohr.co, and we'll be happy to show you all around. We are very excited about it, so happy to share that excitement. And thanks again for spending some time with us. Cheers.